my view. I mean, I have, there's so much of there's so much resonance between what I think is true and the kinds of things Jesus said. Right. My issue with organized religion, every organized religion, is just that clearly what we're really talking about are deeper universal truths about the nature of mind, right? Whether we limit it to human minds or just mind itself, consciousness itself. And so there's no culture, there's no religion, there's no provincial cult that has the full story. And the burden on us in every present generation, but certainly now in the 21st century, where there are all the barriers to
universalization,
all the barriers to getting information and translating from other languages, all of that's broken down. We have access to everyone's ideas, right? There've been 100 billion people, and a bunch of them have had good ideas, a bunch of them have had bad ideas, and we have access to thousands of years of human conversation. And so my only argument,
sort out what those ideas were.
My only argument is that we should only care about using the best ideas, and we no longer have the right to any deep, serious sectarianism. Right now, that's not to say that you can't be especially taken with Jesus and the tradition that has grown up around him, and you're kind of bored with Socrates, and so you don't spend as much time with him, and that's all fine. But the problem I've had traditionally with organized religion is religion historically is the only corner of culture where people begin saying to themselves and to their children, we're playing a totally different game over here. This is not a matter of just ideas and human beings and human conversations and ordinary books. No, these books were written by God or inspired by God, and they can't be edited. And
I think it seems to me that the danger in that, I'm not disagreeing with you, but it seems to me the danger in that is that it actually minimizes the problem of atrocity that's associated with sectarianism, because and perhaps you're not.
No, I'll agree with you. You can heap as many atrocities as you want on that side of the balance. I will agree with you.
Well, okay, so this is what I'm pointing to, though, because we were having a discussion in some ways about sacred things, and then we're talking about the issue of religion, and so there's a couple of things I want to say about that. Dostoevsky had it right to some degree in The Grand Inquisitor, because do you remember that story, The Grand Inquisitor?
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, I'm it's been many several decades since I actually read the book, but yeah.
Well, the remarkable thing about that story is Christ comes back to earth, and he does some miracles, and it's the church himself that puts him in jail, and then the head of the church comes to the jail and says, "What the hell are you doing back here? The last thing we need is you. We've got everything sorted out. We know what's going on. It's like, we're going to put you to death tomorrow." And then Christ kisses him on the lips, and the Grand Inquisitor turns white. And then when he leaves, the Grand Inquisitor, he leaves the door open. And that's so brilliant. And, Dostoevsky was writing at the same time as Nietzsche and had quite an influence on Nietzsche, as it turned out. But because Dostoevsky was writing fiction, he could go places that Dostoevsky couldn't go as a philosopher. And one of the things he was trying to point out was that despite the proclivity to totalitarianism that you can lay at the feet of sectarian religion, the door's left open. And, all of us have to come to terms with the fact that our institutions, religious and otherwise, tend to ossify into these totalitarian structures that are analogous socially, I think, in some ways to the default network that you just described. They're trying to point to something beyond that, but they degenerate and ossify, and then but then we have to go underneath that too if we're going to get our criticisms right, because as terrified as it's reasonable to be about religious sectarianism and totalitarianism, it's also necessary to remember that chimpanzees go on raiding parties. and kill the neighboring tribe, so to speak. And they're not motivated by religious concerns. And so to put that at the feet of religion, even implicitly, I think I understand why that's an impulse, but it doesn't face the problem deeply enough. And it also obscures a potential solution, I think, because it tends to throw the baby out with the bathwater. And I know you're trying to regain the baby.
No, I'm trying to save the baby.
Yes.
No, I love that baby. I mean, for me, the crucial variables that make religion itself so problematic are, one, the religions, and this is true of the Abrahamic ones in particular, the religions that are focused on a text, right, that can't be edited. Now, religious moderates and religious liberals will disagree with me, and they'll say that the whole tradition is a matter of, reinterpreting and grappling with the contradictions and and that's all a very rich discourse and blah blah blah. But the real problem is the books themselves betray their merely human origin on almost every page. There's just it's true of the plays of Shakespeare. It's true of the Iliad and the Odyssey. It's true of Virgil. It's true of Dostoevsky, and it's true of the Bible, right? In all its parts, right? So if you just imagine how good a book could be, if it were truly written or dictated by an omniscient being. I mean, it's trivially easy to imagine that these would be so much better than they in fact are.
It's really not that easy to translate the sorts of experiences that you're pointing to into words.
I know,
right?
No, but you can do it better and worse.
Okay, let's talk about that for a minute. Better and worse, because that's really and I want to tie this back to your comments about navigation earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So, we do have, and this is perhaps an issue of definition, getting the definition straight again here. We do have the sense that some texts are deeper than others. And I don't think it's reasonable to disagree about that. You can read a shallow story. You think, well, that was shallow. And you can read a deep story and you think that was deep, but you don't know exactly what you mean by shallow or deep. So let me just add one footnote here, which is somewhat confounding. It goes to what we were just saying about psychedelics. It's possible for you to be bringing the depth to a text or to a circumstance or to a puddle in a parking lot that isn't necessarally there, right? So this is where it gets confusing. The postmodern quandary.
Yeah,
yes, exactly.
I mean, literally, if you're going to connect all the dots, you can. I mean, this is something I did in The End of Faith as a parlor trick, just because I wanted to prove this point. Is that I literally walked into a bookstore and went to the cookbook aisle of the bookstore and randomly chose a cookbook and opened it up at random and just wrote down the recipe, and then created a mystical text on the basis of that recipe. I mean, I just showed that this recipe, which it was for some Hawaiian cookbook, was like wok seared fish and shrimp cakes or something. And I took the ingredients in that recipe and wove a completely confabulatory, mystical text out of those ingredients. Now, that was something I was bringing to the text. There was no author creating that document.
That's clearly a problem. And look,
and the truth is, people can always do that, right? So it's very hard to keep score here and to be rigorous. All we can do is again and again have this experience of you say something that on your own side purports to be meaningful and intends to be meaningful, and you're trying to convey something, and then I and other people seem to grasp what you're communicating, and we have this intersubjective convergence, which is increasingly satisfying. And yes, so I mean, but I do take your point that Dostoevsky was writing. The Brothers Karamazov is a deeply interesting, meaningful document.